You would have to have been living under a rock to have not heard about the Cashgate scandal that has rocked F1. With team principals all having their say, it appears there is another storyline that no one is talking about. Stick around to the end to find out what's the most recent accusations that Red Bull have thrown at Mercedes, and how has Toto responded, and what does Bernie Ecclstone have to do with it all? The Red Bull cost cap scandal has been the topic on everyone's lips for a number of weeks now, with new Constructors' Championship winners recently being punished for exceeding the 2021 budget cap of $145 million. While the FIA only announced their findings about Red Bull's wrongdoing recently, the rumors around the breach have been spreading like wildfire since the Singapore Grand Prix, weeks before any official statement. Red Bull was fined $7 million and given a 10% decrease in aerodynamic testing for exceeding the expense cap for 2021. The fine will not be deducted from a future budget cap. The FIA determined that they had exceeded the £114 million limit by £1.86 million, and Red Bull accepted an approved breach agreement with the governing body, admitting guilt and taking the punishment. Christian Horner, the Red Bull CEO, was visibly upset, claiming that his competitors had advocated for the punishment and that it would significantly influence his team's ability to remain competitive despite their supremacy this season. He likened the reduction in aerodynamic time in the wind tunnel and computational fluid dynamics to a half-second loss in lap time. The FIA stated that Red Bull erroneously applied a fictitious tax credit of £1.4 million. They would have been in violation by just £432,652 if it had been eliminated. Mercedes engineering director Andrew Chauvelin claimed that Red Bull's punishment was far from harsh, emphasizing the critical necessity of every euro. According to him, the team makes judgments on what they don't do daily, ranging from £1,000 to £2,000 to £3,000. They must measure what they invest against the performance they will receive. They do not have enough money, so you must be very selective about where it goes. It's impossible to put time into it, but the truth is, the money buys performance. Regarding the price of an update kit, £432,652 might be considered a significant update kit. Laurent Mekies, Ferrari's sports director, agreed with Chauvelin, saying the penalties would have minimal influence on Red Bull. "We feel it is modest. We don't see it on the same magnitude to compensate for the expenditure," he explained. "You are free to spend your money elsewhere if it is not linked with any budget cap decrease for them. You will spend less time in the wind tunnel and more time elsewhere. Overall, the true impact of the penalty will be extremely minimal." The budget cap was imposed to improve competitiveness by bringing parity in spending across teams. However, widespread dissatisfaction with the process has raised serious concerns about how it was handled, not least the length of time it took, Red Bull's complaints about financial rule changes being made mid-season, and the suggestion that their deal was worked out behind closed doors with FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem. Its implementation and enforcement are scrutinized by teams dissatisfied with the year's outcome on several levels. Seidel was conflicted about the consequence, he said. He went on to say that, on the plus side, it's wonderful that everyone has evidence that the FIA's audit process with all of the teams was comprehensive and meticulous. "It's mixed feelings, to be honest," he told Autosport. "I think on the positive side, it's actually good that we have confirmation that the audit process the FIA has done with all the teams has been done in a very thorough and diligent way, and which, in the end, confirmed that one team was in violation. It's also a plus that a penalty was imposed, which should be good for the sport as a whole because it discourages teams from going into the red zone in the future, regardless of whether it's due to financial, sporting, or technological constraints." He didn't stop there, though. He added that the sentence from every angle does not suit the violation. As a result, it needs to be harsher, and everyone expects that the penalty for such violations will be far more severe in the future. When asked about the implications of the aero decrease, he stated sternly that certainly 10% makes a difference in terms of development, but once again, compared to the breach, it just does not fit. That punishment seemed to have enraged him. Seidel emphasized that it was heartening to see that the FIA's procedure was effective, but he questioned the amount of the fines and advocated for tougher punishments in the future. Seidel also brushed aside Horner's justifications about why Red Bull went over the cap, claiming that he hadn't seen the Red Bull CEO's news conference. "I didn't watch it," he said. "I didn't like fairy tales as a kid. That's why I wasn't interested to listen to Christian's press conference today." McLaren CEO Zak Brown, who got into a spat with Horner after submitting a letter to the FIA demanding harsh penalties for Red Bull, shared Zeidel's thoughts. Everyone seemed to have been so pissed at the penalty because, really, how did Red Bull get a free pass? According to reports, former Formula One CEO Bernie Ecclstone arranged Red Bull's budget cap penalty. The Briton was instrumental in assisting current president Mohammed Ben Sulayem and deciding on a punishment for the Milton Keynes-based club. Mercedes and Ferrari were not convinced by the penalty when the FIA disclosed it later. They assumed it would have little impact on a team like Red Bull. Now claims of Ecclestone's participation in the matter have many people scratching their heads. Notably, Ecclestone is a close buddy of Red Bull CEO Christian Horner, with whom he once vacationed as a family. Ecclestone also advocated for Ben Sulayem's candidacy as the next president and is friendly with him. As a result, it was unsurprising that Sulayem sought advice from his predecessor. Well, at least we know how Red Bull got a free pass, but we've never asked our sleeves who snitched on Red Bull in the first place. Some say Toto Wolff, but how true is this? Toto Wolff denies the FIA leak claim after Red Bull's accusation. While there was a leak, it is unclear where it came from, with Shaila Ann Rao, the FIA Secretary General for Racing and a former lawyer and associate for Toto Wolff's Mercedes team, being one of the major suspects. Wolff had disputed that Rao is the source of the leak, stating that Red Bull is only stirring the pot to divert attention away from itself. The leak is not from the FIA, he insisted. There are 10 finance directors sitting together all year trying to figure out who did what. Who talked about it? I think it was them, Wolff suggested. But there was a violation, so it doesn't matter how it came about. A violation is a violation. This is also a kind of secondary theater of war. It's an attempt by Red Bull to shift the focus. Red Bull team principal Christian Horner has made his displeasure with the other team's activities known, stating that the other team's principals have acted inappropriately in dealing with the Cashgate controversy. Horner claims that the charges have taken a heavy toll on his team, with the brand and its sponsors suffering reputational harm and staff members' children being ridiculed as a result of their parents being labeled as cheaters in the media. The Red Bull chief wants teams to face the consequences of their charges. Many in the paddock labeled Red Bull as cheaters and accused them of a larger expenditure than was ultimately proven, relying on rumors rather than facts. Wolff dismissed Horner's statements, arguing that only one of the 10 F1 teams at Red Bull has done anything wrong, and that calling out the other teams is merely playing the victim rather than accepting his team's shortcomings. But we need to know if Red Bull's cost cap penalty is sufficient to discourage others. It was disclosed earlier this week from the track that Red Bull will face a $7 million punishment and a 10% decrease in aerodynamic testing time for next year, after exceeding F1's budget cap by $1.8 million last year. With rival teams arguing that the fine is too mild, but Christian Horner calling it draconian, how will this affect Red Bull's competitiveness next year? And is the punishment serious enough to deter other teams from doing the same? We'll just have to wait and see. We're very confident every other team has learned from Red Bull's blunders, and we also know that whoever is discovered exceeding the budget cap next time by the FIA will face harsh sanctions. Do you think Red Bull's penalty was lenient or not? Leave a comment.